Good morning, everyone. I just have had a number of thoughts swirling around in my head, and I thought that it was something that I should talk about and share. So here I am in my pajamas speaking to you. The nature of a lot of what I've been going through personally has been a lot about dredging up memories from the past. So, past lives have been a big part of my spiritual journey, remembering vivid memories from times long since gone, remembering people from times long since gone. And inevitably, when this is the work that you're doing, what you hear from people is you need to let go of the past. Maybe you're dwelling too much in the past. And particularly in a lot of spiritual circles, I feel like there is this focus on, the be here now thing, right? And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I just, I feel like there's almost this bypassing of what your experience has been. And in my experience and from my perspective, you really can't be here now if you have not processed and integrated your past. I feel like what people really need is more tools to reconcile with, integrate, and heal from what has happened to them before there can even be a focus on being here now or even creating and building a future that looks like anything that they want. And the basis for my understanding of this is that what I've been shown from the past. So, for example, I had a lifetime in the American Civil War. Having firsthand gone through that experience and having vivid memories from it, I now see how much of the unresolved trauma from that time period still carries over into modern America. How much of what we see playing out, even in the election right now, is still related to unresolved wounding and trauma from the 1860s and before. So, my argument is this need to push the past aside as if it doesn't affect us anymore, or that almost like I've been made to feel from some people that it's almost a weakness to be examining memories or to be, reliving emotions from something I've experienced in the past, as if, well, I should just be past that. Here's the thing, is if it's still a program that's running, if I'm still reacting from a place of wounding based on what has happened to me in the past, then I need to address that before I can address what's going on here and now and moving forward. I will continue to enact cycles of wounding from the pain of the past, essentially reenacting the past over and over again unless I've resolved and processed those emotions. So I can't exactly prove this, but it's kind of my theory that a lot of the issues that we're facing as individuals and as a collective all stem back to the fact that people who have gone before, our ancestors, past versions of ourselves, we have these wounds and programs ingrained and embedded in our cells that have not been resolved. So a lot of, modern times, we have this opportunity to thrive rather than just survive. So this is the next step on, what we're taking on as humans. But the people who came before us were much more in survival mode. What's survival mode? Survival mode is basically constantly having your brain activated in fight, flight, or freeze. So when you're in survival mode, you really don't have the time or the luxury of processing the emotions or the traumas that you're experiencing because you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to get through that experience. But I feel like what has happened for us as people is we're still running on that old program of survival, even though we don't have to. Even if our actual circumstance doesn't require that, we're still going at 100 miles an hour, sweeping our emotions and our trauma and our wounds under the surface. And then we're wondering why our life doesn't look the way we want, or why we're in pain, or why we're having physical ailment connected to these emotions. Why, it seems like we can't have the relationships, the depth of communication and vulnerability and loving kindness that we want to create. These are just some examples. So, for me, I see it less as a dwelling in the past and more as a honoring the past for what it truly is. There's another quip I hear a lot, and that's, my trauma doesn't define me. My past doesn't define me. I am not what happened to me. These things. And these are meant to be statements that are said to trauma survivors to tell them, the things that you're ashamed of, the things that have caused you pain do not define who you are. And I'm going to speak very carefully, because no, it's not that an abuser or a circumstance that caused you grief or pain or struggle. It's not that you are that event or you are that person who hurt you. But my argument is that your trauma absolutely does define you. It does shape who you become and who you are and how you respond to the world around you. Now, you can choose to respond. You can choose to heal and grow and respond, therefore, to the world from that healed place. But the thing I've learned about trauma is that you never get to be the person you were before it happened. That doesn't have to have a negative connotation. And so I feel the healing process needs to be less about the focus on maybe getting back to who you were before, but rather integrating who you are in this experience, who you are now. I read something recently that kind of hit me in a weird way, and it's all about acceptance, this idea that until you accept what has happened to you, you really can't move on. And I think that's true. What I read went on to explain that, you don't have to be defined by what happened to you. You don't have to be in this victim consciousness. Look at Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King and all these people throughout history that are inspiring. They've been through trauma and they've chosen, not to be defined by their trauma, was the argument. I think that oversimplifies and bulldozes through a few important things. Number one, we use and invoke these examples of brave, heroic, inspiring, loving, compassionate people. And that's awesome. Part of their mission here was to show us what bravery and courage and love and kindness looks like. But we're looking at them in hindsight, right? We're looking at their experience saying, look what they've been through and they became this. Almost assuming that when they were going through a time of great difficulty, they were magically able to do it with grace and love and compassion and without much struggle. And I know I've used these examples myself to beat myself up for not handling my circumstance better. I get curious though, and I think, if we're gonna use, let's even use an even more extreme example. Okay, Jesus, right? Jesus, we put him on this pedestal of sacredness and say, well, Jesus sacrificed so much and he was still loving and kind and he went through trauma. Okay, he was killed. He was crucified, which is a very excruciating way of being killed. And we say, well, look at Jesus. He suffered, but he brought so much love and compassion and inspiration to the world. And oftentimes then people who are trauma survivors use these examples to make themselves feel bad for having feelings of anger, for having feelings of struggle, for being sad, for being depressed, for wondering if it's worth it. Well, why can't I just be like insert inspirational person here? But when you actually look at the stories of those inspirational people and you go to the moment of the trauma, the moment of the pain, even Jesus asked that the cup be taken from him. He asked to not have to do the painful thing that he was being asked to do on his divine mission. I would also think that probably even somebody like Nelson Mandela, at the moment when he was in jail and he didn't know that he was going to be on the other side of that story and able to inspire others, when he was sitting in that space, not knowing how the story was going to play out, he probably had moments of deep faith and courage and belief. He probably also had moments of fear, pain, suffering, despair. So when we judge ourselves and judge others for being in places of fear, pain, despair, depression, anxiety, worry, to then invoke some inspiring figure as if they never experienced those emotions is silly, in my opinion. I think we should rather realize that, yes, our trauma defines us, but we get to choose how it defines us. And that's also a process. So we can go through a period of feeling victimized, of feeling anger, pain, sadness, grief, all of these things. And it doesn't mean we won't get to the other side of that thing. It doesn't mean that we aren't simultaneously inspiring, filled with courage. I just think there's there's a focus on wanting to be in the positive emotion and not acknowledging fully the negative. And I only bring this up not to say that I condone people sitting in their sadness and grief and misery and never making a move to move out of that, but rather we need to fully embrace those dark emotions, those shadow states, in order to integrate them. And I feel like most of the wounding and pain of the world comes from the fact that we've bypassed those dark spaces. We haven't processed them fully or integrated them. So therefore, our trauma does define us. It is a subconscious program that is running everything we do and hurting people we care about. And it's causing a global pain that everyone is also experiencing. So truly integrating our darkness, truly going into those dark, uncomfortable emotions and spaces safely and with support is actually the most noble quest that people can take. Because with this, we purge it out of our systems once and for all. And a lot of times that purge does not look pretty. Sorry. A lot of spiritual people really want this process to look prettier than it is. For me, what really supporting people through these dark nights of the soul, through these moments of difficulty, pain, and grief, what really supporting that story is acknowledging it, sitting in the uncomfortable with that other person to support them through it. Trusting that, yes, those emotions, that healing will take effect and it will shift, and that person will be able to be inspired on the other side of this experience. But we can't ask somebody to be in that place before they are. Be here now, right? And part of sometimes being here now really is thoroughly examining, learning from the past so that we can make a conscious choice to shift going forward rather than consciously working from subconscious patterns of wounding. This is actual empowerment, integrating and going into our past and figuring out what the story really is rather than the story we've been telling ourselves, some of us for centuries. I don't think that's actually disempowering work. I don't think that's dwelling in a place of disempowerment. I think that's actually choosing to reclaim something that has been a false narrative for a really long time. So that's kind of my rant and my diatribe on this. I just have felt in doing work with past lives, I've just felt very judged for continuing to dive into a story that, happened to me a very long time ago. And for me, it's actually been the most important work that I could ever do on behalf of myself, on behalf of the ones that I love and the collective. So I just want to offer that. Hopefully there's somebody out there that resonates with, that I can be, a bit of solidarity for you. But yeah, those are my morning thoughts. Just had to kind of get that out there. And I'm just sending you lots of love and wishing you the best. Have a good weekend.